Change your heart, change your life, change the planet.
Hey everybody, it's Tim Van Orden, and it's less than a month away from my 50th birthday. How the heck did that happen? Not only that, but we're coming up on my 20th vegan anniversary. So I'm going to start making a series of videos about what I have learned in the past 20 years eating a vegan diet, but also what I have learned as I approach 50 and I have now been an athlete for 12 years. I'm no longer the new kid on the block, quite the opposite. So I'm going to start talking about how this journey has progressed for me, where I am now, and where I'm going. So I guess to start this off, I just want to talk about how my process has changed in how I consume information and what types of information I now consume in order to advance my education and in order to grow inside of this conversation and as a human being. When I first started eating a vegan diet, it was purely out of vanity. I simply wanted to look younger. I was an actor about to turn 30, and I didn't want to lose my hair or get wrinkly. So it was vanity. That was it. And I didn't really care about the ethical issues. I didn't really care about the health issues. It was simply the superficial packaging of being human. What do you look like on the outside? And I should go back a little bit, because when I say I didn't care about the ethics, that's not entirely true. I was just oblivious to the suffering caused by my previous diet. I would never harm an animal intentionally, even when I was consuming meat. I was eating cheeseburgers almost every day for years. That was my diet at McDonald's. But I was the only boy in school that I knew that didn't hunt, and I would often get picked on because I wouldn't hunt. And I would go hang out with other boys, and they would go into the woods and kill things, and I always felt terrible about that. But yet I ate meat, so there was a disconnect. And that's really common, I think. So it wasn't until I had been vegan for quite a bit of time that I realized that that disconnect exists, and that the choices you make regarding your diet do have an effect on the suffering of other beings. So that became something that was a foundation of me staying a vegan. And then it became kind of a dogma of sorts, an ideology for me, as I was told by the people that were educating me in veganism. I hadn't read a single book for the first... I didn't read a single book about veganism until I switched to being a raw vegan. So that was in 2004, 98. So 6 years. I was vegan for 6 years without picking up a single book on diet or nutrition or anything of that sort. So I had people talking to me. The restaurant that I worked at, I would constantly interact with the customers and have conversations with them. It's very different working at a vegan restaurant, especially in a city like Los Angeles. It's not like any other restaurant where you may talk about life, perhaps, if you're waiting on people or managing the restaurant, but you're probably not going to talk so much about the dietary implications of the food. But at a vegan restaurant, you do, because people are coming in and they're healing from this illness, or they're losing weight, or they're getting ready for a particular role. A lot of celebrities would come in, and we're trying a diet to change the way that they look, the shape of their body, their skin, etc., their hair, in order to look relevant, I guess I'll say, because youth in Hollywood is more relevant than aging. At least that's the way that it seems to work out, unfortunately. Anyway, a lot of conversations about diet, a lot of anecdotal evidence. So that's what my knowledge was based on, and you hear a lot of miraculous stories of healing and weight loss, and that's all I needed. These people are telling me their stories, it's compelling, they saved their life, they're not dying of cancer, and they're famous people. So that kind of added to the weight. If you know anything about the halo effect, it's a psychological principle that, I don't know if principle's the right word, it's a psychological observation in which if somebody is really good in one domain, if they are an expert of some kind or stand out in some way in a particular domain, we will put a halo around them that then makes everything in 360 degrees like a halo part of the realm of their expertise. For instance, somebody is a celebrity and everything out of their mouth is gold because, well, they're famous. Or somebody's an extraordinary basketball player or Olympic figure skater, and now everything that they say we tune into because they are saying it, and therefore it must have some significance. So we overweight the information that comes out of the mouths of celebrities and sports figures and anybody that is or has achieved a certain rank. Even Neil deGrasse Tyson is a great example of that, where he is Neil deGrasse Tyson. If you want to talk about astrophysics or cosmology, holy cow, the guy's really smart. But then he takes his opinion on diet and such and speaks with the same certainty or authority, but yet he doesn't have the same level of expertise. But yet people will listen to it as if he knows just as much about diet as he does about cosmology or astrophysics, and he doesn't. But people will listen to it and say, well, if Neil deGrasse Tyson says it, it's got to be true. Like if Albert Einstein said something about veganism, well, then it's got to be true because it's Einstein. That's the halo effect. So that was my introduction to veganism. It was mostly anecdotes from celebrities, and I bought them hook, line, and sinker, and obviously it had an impact because here, almost 20 years later, I'm still vegan. Although I use that term sparingly now. I eat a plant-based diet. And even that is a little inaccurate because really what it's about for me, it's not about a label, it's about choices. And the choices that I now make are about compassion. Is this a compassionate choice? Yes or no? Doesn't have to be vegan per se or plant-based per se, but is my choice compassionate? Is my action compassionate? What is the impact on others when I do this? Now, there are some situations where you obviously cannot eliminate a potentially negative impact on someone or something. For instance, I drive, I fly in planes, we till our garden, I kill teaks, fleas and ticks. Yeah, you put them together and you get teaks. I kill ticks and fleas on our cats. So I'm not Jane. I don't sweep the path in front of me, and I don't wear a mask to avoid breathing in small creatures. But I do think about the impact. But I also realize that many of my actions have an unseen impact or unforeseen impact. But I try to make my choices about compassion, not about a label. It's not about being part of a vegan tribe. It's about, is this choice compassionate? And you can be part of a vegan tribe, but maybe a lot of the things that you're doing are not compassionate, or compassion never comes into the conversation, or you never consider the compassionate cost or equation when you make a particular decision. And I see this a lot with vegan activists or just vegan novices who scream at people that eat meat, try to shame them, try to hurt them, often enact violence against them. And many of my neighbors are farmers. I live across the street from the largest dairy farm in the state of Vermont. So these are my neighbors. Are they evil people? No. Do they consider Do they consider the same things when they make their choices? No. And that's okay. I'm not going to make them wrong for that. I'm not going to call them evil or ignorant or stupid or primitive. I'm going to call them my neighbors. I'm going to make choices that are compassionate to them as well. So how I am an activist, if I am an activist at all, has changed quite a bit. I lead by example now, with the focus being on compassion rather than on having the label of vegan. Because if you're vegan and not compassionate, I really don't see the point. And you're kind of hypocritical. But I see a lot of that. So anyway, I digress. So I picked up my first book on diet and nutrition in 2004 when I went raw, and that was David Wolfe and Steve Arlen's book, Nature's First Law, which I really wouldn't call a book on nutrition. It was more of a propaganda piece, and apparently it's a pretty much word-for-word copy of another book. They basically plagiarized somebody else's work, sold it as their own, and that was my first introduction into dietary dogma in written form. And then I went from other raw guru to raw guru, going to their lectures, reading their books, and again, most of it is dogma and ideology, and many of them conflict with each other. There's a right way to eat raw food, and you're doing it the wrong way, and so many battles and infights, and so little compassion. That's the thing that really probably put me more on the path that I'm on now, is that I watched so many people that call themselves vegans fighting with each other, and so many people that call themselves raw vegans, supposedly the most compassionate of all, because they're even compassionate with themselves. They don't make a single choice that harms their body or anybody else's body, and yet there was all this fighting and bickering and teams and tribes, and we're better than you and you're stupid, and I just got sick of it. That sounded Irish. I just got sick of it. So that led me to the awareness or awakening that people are people. And there's some really, really good people that I really like being around who eat animal products. And there's some people that call themselves vegans and think that they're the best people in the world, and I don't want to be around them for a minute. So I started expanding my knowledge base. I started researching things that were way outside of veganism or raw food, and I stopped looking for data that was going to confirm my choices or my beliefs, and I started consuming information generally, widely, and many of the things that I read and engaged with were in direct opposition to my beliefs and my practices. And I started learning about the scientific method, part of which is to try to disprove your hypothesis, or the null hypothesis, they call this. So the first thing you want to do is see if you can prove yourself wrong. And if you can prove yourself wrong, then you don't go any further. But if you can't prove yourself wrong, then you start to look for mechanisms and reasons why what you think might be the correct or appropriate way to do things. But first, try to disprove yourself before you speak with such certainty. So I studied everything I could on the human body and diet and physiology and microbiology, etc. It doesn't mean I learned everything, far from it. Probably didn't even learn 0.1%, and that's probably an over-exaggeration. Probably learned 0.01% if I'm lucky. But I learned a lot, and it really opened my eyes up to things, and that just expanded the types of information that I was interested in, and there were always these rabbit holes to go down, and neuroscience showed up on my radar, Buddhism showed up on my radar, psychology showed up on my radar, philosophy, all these things that I really didn't consider much. And each one of them seemed to have really useful information about living. Each one of them seemed to have bits of knowledge and understanding that made life make sense in a way that the strict, limited, black and white ideologies that I had embraced did not. And there's a lot of apologetics in veganism and raw foodism, anything that has an ism attached to it. There's always going to be apologetics. There are going to be people that engage in confirmation bias or are victim of confirmation bias and therefore engage in motivated reasoning where they are motivated to find reasons to justify their beliefs and their position, but they'll often engage in things that are unethical and which lack compassion in order to try to win fights or win arguments. I'm not interested in winning anything. I'm interested in learning. I'm interested in growing. I'm interested in just being part of this incredible world and soaking up as much of it as I can and being as gentle as I can in that process. So 20 years in, I know a hell of a lot more than when I started, and I'm just as committed to eating a plant-based diet as probably more than ever. I've learned enough to realize that I do not need to eat animal products. I just don't need to. There's no reason to. And I know there's a lot of videos out there scaring people into saying that they need to have animal products because they're missing glycine, so they need bone broth, or they're not getting enough vitamin D, or they're not getting enough essential fatty acids, or they're not getting enough B12 or vitamin K. None of those arguments really hold up, and they can be easily fixed. If there is a problem that you're having or you have a concern, it can be easily fixed with a supplement. And people say, well, supplements aren't natural. Well, neither is this iPhone that I'm making this video with, and neither is the computer or phone that you're typing out your comment with. That's not natural either. So what's your point? Nothing we do now is natural. None of the fruits and vegetables that you eat on a vegan diet or the animals that you eat on a non-vegan diet are natural. They've all been hybridized and genetically selected. None of it is natural anymore. So just forget about this naturalistic fallacy that so many people fall victim to. We've shaped pretty much everything in our environments, and that's where we find ourselves. So let's work with it. Let's make the best of it. Let's learn about it. Let's learn about each other and let the dogmas and ideologies go. And for me, now being compassionate in my choices rather than calling myself a vegan is not about having an ideology that I want to spread. It's simply about, do I feel good about this choice? That's it. Do I feel good about it? Yes or no? And is my feeling good contingent on me denying something or removing some inconvenient truths from my input so that I don't have to interact with them? Like people who walk down streets where they know no homeless people are, so they don't have to see them, and then they can pretend like where they live is great and everything is going well, and that's not their problem. So there's the first video. I think I'm going to end it there because it's a long rant, but coming on 20 years and changed a lot. Maybe it's just getting older. Maybe that'll do it. Maybe all the trials and tribulations that I have been through and all the humbling moments that I've had in my life have brought me to this place. Or maybe it's a combination of that and simply educating myself, exposing myself to more and more ideas, more and more information, and really allowing myself to be open and vulnerable as I process that information and not try to armor myself up and protect myself from the information as it comes in. Like bracing yourself for pain when you go to the dentist, something like that. I don't want to brace myself for new information. I want to be open to it. I want to consider it. I want to play with it. I want to chew on it a little bit and taste it. Maybe I swallow it and digest it. Maybe I absorb it. Maybe I just spit it out. I don't know, but I'm going to try. And that doesn't mean that all information is equally valid. Some information you can pretty much dismiss right away, not because it opposes your belief system, but because you can see that it just doesn't have merit right from the start. Like, for instance, if someone were to tell me that it's night outside right now, well, clearly it's not, at least not where I'm standing. Okay, so there you go. Lots more to come. I'm just going to try to knock out these videos on my way to turning 50 and talk about what I've learned as a plant-based compassionate eater, and show you, I guess, a little bit of my process as an athlete as I move forward. And I'm as fit as I've ever been right now. It's kind of fun. I'm putting on a lot of upper body muscle, not intentionally. I've just been moving a lot of heavy things around as I put the U.S. Snowshoe Championships on and then broke it down and had lots of heavy stuff to move around, and now I'm seeing the results. I've gained some muscle mass, and I'm an old guy that apparently doesn't get enough protein. So that's fun, but we'll talk about that in another video. All right, if you like this video, hit like. If you like this channel, subscribe. And thank you for those of you that have been with me now since 2006. And if you really want to help out and allow me to do more of this, come on over to Patreon. $1 or $2 a month. That's it. And you allow me to do this without all kinds of crazy financial stress. All right. See you soon. Bye.